Set the tone. Here we go.
It took acts of God for Chicago to win that game.
I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate this all.
This guy's unbelievable.
Yes, just because you have him, it does not necessarily mean it's going to win you the game.
Every single NFL team, including yours, has its problems. Some of them can't run. Some of them can't stop the run. Some of them can't rush the passer. And some of them can't protect their own quarterback.
He is dragged down, and they've sacked him again!
Everybody has their flaws, I suppose. But what separates elite coaches from the rest of the pack is their ability to take their weaknesses and turn them into strengths. One of those elite coaches has a whole little jingle about it that you see every single week.
Good, better, bad. Good, better, bad. Never let it rest. Never let it rest. Good gets better. Good gets better. Everybody gets better. Everybody gets better.
Today's show is all about those fatal flaws that might not actually be that fatal after all, and all of the schemes, teams, and everything in between that makes them work. Welcome to the walkthrough. One of the biggest narrative through lines in the NFL this year is these juggernauts across the league that, for whatever reason or another, can't get out of their own way. With the Bills, obviously, the Achilles heel that we've seen throughout the entire year is their run defense.
He's going the distance, and he's gone.
And with the Packers, quite frankly, it's just injuries. Both of these teams have been seen as Super Bowl contenders, darn near Super Bowl favorites the entire year. And yet, going into the playoffs, we have our doubts. So our first guest today, we're bringing on Coach Cody Alexander. He's going to walk us through why maybe the Packers aren't as dead as you think, and also why the Bills' run defense isn't as bad as you think. We have friend of the program, Coach Cody Alexander, on. Cody, how are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on, man.
So I kind of want to start off with the Bills' run defense here, because as of right now, the AFC, all of a sudden, kind of loaded at the top. You have Denver, you have Buffalo, you have New England, you have the Chargers, you have the Jags, whole bunch of teams, not just vying for the 1 seed, but also kind of vying for, you know, that AFC crown. I really don't know who's actually going to come out of this conference, quite frankly. But if the Bills were to do it, they have to fix their run defense along the way, or it's probably not going to happen. So I'd love to kind of have you walk us through why their run defense has been giving up so many massive, explosive runs and whether or not it's fixable.
It's what happens when you build an entire defense around beating the Chiefs and the Bengals, and then the entire meta of what offenses are doing in the NFL flips. So you basically created a spread defense. All of a sudden, it now flashes to everybody's trying to get in 12 personnel, 13 personnel. They're still passing, but that run game is still going to be like a premium part of what that offense is trying to do. And so what you have is a roster full of hybrid players at linebacker, at defensive tackle, and even at safety. And you're really seeing a lot of teams take advantage of the lighter personnel that they have on the field. And then you've also had Taron Johnson, who's been injured. So it's kind of a whole kind of part of a shift. And then now you have a defensive scheme that really isn't built to survive in today's game in 2025.
One of the kind of dichotomies of this Bills run defense, and this is something that you and I were going back and forth with like 2 weeks ago because we were trying to figure out if this is even fixable. Going into this past week, which I kind of throw out the Browns game because Judkins got hurt and it was kind of a mess. But going into this past week, the Bills run defense was 4th in tackles for loss against the run at 40, but also 2nd in explosives allowed, which was most in the AFC, by the way. So how are we trying to reconcile that? And as far as explosives off missed tackles, Next Gen Stats had the Bills at 22 explosive runs due to missed tackles, 3rd most in the league, only behind the Jets and the Bengals. 22 of those 63 explosives are due to missed tackles, which is a lot.
We were giving up some runs, and then because of that, they were a two-dimensional offense and keeping us off balance a little bit there. So
it's kind of an all or nothing run defense here, where either they're getting in the backfield or they're getting gashed and nothing in between. And I'm not 100% sure how to fix that, quite frankly.
Well, they've tried to fix it in a way of where this used to be one of the premier split field coverage teams. They wanted to run a lot of quarters. They wanted to run a lot of cover two. And then last year, when we started seeing offenses shift to more of a run-centric style, or at least, hey, let's get into heavier packages, their answer for that was to drop a safety down. So the problem is now exacerbated if you don't win in that loaded box. So you have everybody in a gap, but now you've dropped the safety outside of the box. Whereas in split field, you now have 2 safeties in the hash. So yes, you're giving up more in the box, but it's less likely that you're going to get a 40, 50, 60-yard run because I've got 2 safeties that can really leverage that guy post snap. So if you miss now in a single high defense, if I miss in that second level, I've got 1 guy left, and that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to make that tackle. So that's kind of like that waterfall effect of, okay, we fail on the front line. We failed at the second level. Now our third level is a hope and a prayer, and we just got to hope that our corner saves a touchdown. And that's really what has kind of become the issue. The tackling, again, is probably something that they can fix in the offseason just by – it's a skill that needs to be developed. But it's really part of the scheme, and then their answer to loading the box has now kind of exacerbated the problem when you just can't make tackles in that second level.
I made a cut up of all of their 20-plus yard runs allowed this year. Almost all of them were in a single high safety structure or a middle field close structure, depending on how what terminology people want to use at home. And the thing that really struck me was the angle that these safeties were taking from, 15, 20, 22 yards deep. Like there's a specific run in the Atlanta game where it felt like the safety was thinking he was going to be responsible for the backside A gap and that everything was going to be funneled into him. And then all of a sudden the run hit front side and he had to adjust in real time. And he's like, wait, this isn't supposed to happen. And again, a safety coming 20 yards off the deck against Bijan Robinson of all running backs. Like that's just not a winnable matchup. And I kind of want you to walk me through that Atlanta play. Cause to me, like that is the definitive play for why this run defense hasn't worked.
Yeah, so you have a typical what we have seen them do, which is you're going to drop a safety down weak. Now, you can do this strong weak. It really doesn't matter. They're dropping the safety down weak. You get a motion into a bunch. And what that does is it now creates a 6-man box. The problem that we have, and this is a great example of it here, is that you actually have a 3-by-1 alignment. They created a bunch. They have a wide set on the other side. They're going to run a screen to one side out of the pistol. You have a 6-man box. And so what you have now is you have 5-on-6, and the backside defensive end doesn't really count because he's got to stay home for the quarterback. You have man-on-man blocking. You have a safety at 15 yards that now has to take an angle. Everybody gets blocked up, and now you have a safety that he looks like he has a decent angle. He actually over pursues it. We get a jump cut, and now Bijan is off to the races. The corner falls off. Now we have the backside linebacker running. And so it's essentially what happens is a lot of times you get lulled to sleep into thinking that you have the number advantage. But really where we are in the post-spread era is that offenses know this. They know you're going to match it. We have short motion to get into a 3-by-1. We vacate your other linebacker. It's now 6-man, and we know the backside. So now it's 5-on-5, and you have to hope that your single high safety makes the play.
Still running hard, dragging tacklers down inside the 10. Robinson shows the quickness and the power in one run.
It's just about space creation, right? And this is something when I talk to offensive coaches, space exists in the run game, not just in the pass game. You're trying to use angles and timing to just give your running back a crease. I always say that the floor for a run game is set by the offensive line. The ceiling is set by the running back. And if you can just get that running back, like let's say it's one of the best in the game in Bijan Robinson, if you can get him into space, however you manage to do it, whether it's through formation, motion, just having a great offensive line, he can take care of the rest. And so I think, the Atlanta offense, when it's at its best, does really well with space creation for Bijan. But I feel like the Bills defense has done really poorly at space mitigation. Like they're not closing stuff down quickly. So how do they fix it? Or is there a fix? Like, are they just doomed?
I would love to say that there's a fix because here's the deal. The best thing to do right now for them is to use their quickness against the offense that they're seeing, which means that they need to start stunting more and stunting more inside to try and create some penetration. You could argue too that we need to start blitzing a little bit more, maybe some B gap penetrating blitzes, especially for the amount of zone that they get. And so those types of things are great on paper, but when you start thinking about it at the NFL level of like, okay, but if I go stunt the wrong way and they don't run that way, and now we've kind of waterfalled that back, I now have to then make sure that my linebackers get back to opposite of where we're going. And so those things have to work together. And so I don't think too that that's philosophically what the Bills want to do. They don't want to be a high blitz rate team, and they don't want to necessarily be a big stunt team. So what they've actually done, Brett, is that they've actually inserted defensive backs into this scheme. And so now we're seeing corner blitzes, which have absolutely doubled. Their nickel blitzes, I think, have almost doubled from what they were last year. And so what they're trying to do is get best of both worlds, of where we're going to move you, but we're going to have an edge presence. So if it does roll off the front or the back of the table, there's a DB right there. And most of the time, those guys are not in the blocking scheme.
I will say one of the advantages, this is going to sound crazy, so audience, just go with me here. One of the advantages of them having an all or nothing run defense is it's actually played into the strength of the team overall, which is their own run game and having Josh Allen a quarterback, because they die quickly. They don't die slowly. And that's one of the big reasons why, in the 6 games that they've given up 185 plus yards rushing, which you typically wouldn't win that kind of game, they went 4-2 in those games. And they also led in time of possession in 4 of those games. Like, they were down 21-0 to the Patriots and still ran the ball 37 times. They still had the ball for 35 minutes. So that sounds impossible, quite frankly. But it's because when these teams are getting these huge chunks in the run game, it's not taking off a lot of clock. And this is something I've really come to appreciate over the years, is that pace of play, especially when you have an elite quarterback that on average is going to be more efficient on a drive-to-drive basis than the opposing team. As long as you have the majority of the possessions, like if you get one extra possession, if you get a little bit more time of possession, if you can, have enough time on the clock so that you can let James Cook do his thing and grind the opposing defense down, you can win by the time you get late in the fourth quarter. So yeah, the Bills' run defense is bad, but they're bad in a good way, I guess is the best way I can phrase it, because they're not losing time. They're just losing yards and losing points. But you got Josh Allen. You can make up yards and points. You can't make up time. Like, that is the ultimate finite resource in this sport.
End zone, touchdown! Josh Allen to Dawson Knox. Buffalo takes the lead.
Now, speaking of juggernaut defenses, I want to alleviate the concern of Packers fans. Yes, losing Micah Parsons is bad. Devastating, even, I would say. But that, to me, is not going to be the reason, if there is a reason why the Packers get bounced in January. That, to me, is not going to be the reason. And that's because they have Jeff Hafley. Like, he has coordinated a great Packers defense before without Micah Parsons. I truly believe he did it against Chicago without Micah Parsons. Like, remember, there was 4 minutes left in the game, and they allowed that Bears offense 6 points. Like, he was really calling himself a whale of a game before everything's kind of got wacky in the last few minutes in overtime. But Micah or no Micah, I don't think the Packers are dead yet. Yeah, they're banged up, but that's still a really, really good defense.
I totally agree. And I think the biggest difference between the 2 Bears games, because that's what's going to be highlighted, is just that one, Caleb Williams didn't make the throw. And then on the other one, Caleb Williams made just an absolute throw. I mean, Keyshawn Nixon is right there. Moon drops right over top of him in the only spot that is even allowed to be where the receiver's the only one that can get it. And I think what you've seen with him is that he knows that, yes, Micah is a leveraging tool, but that's not what's going to win you games. I think we've seen that play out in Dallas year in and year out, that just because you have him, it does not necessarily mean that's going to win you the game. You have to have kind of a complete defensive unit, and I think that's what they have. They play a lot of base personnel, so they can kind of leverage people off that way. They have one of the best blitz coverages in the NFL, bar none. Actually, in fact, it's not even close. So they're doing what they're supposed to do on a down-to-down basis. And I think a lot of people probably don't realize, but this is not a defense that had a super high pressure rate. So it's not like Micah Parsons was just a game wrecker in the sense of that he was manufacturing all these sacks and all these tackles for loss. He's a star. Don't get me wrong. Any defense would be crazy to say that we're going to lose him. But even last year, they're pretty much sitting where they were. And so I think like you look at it projected forward into the playoffs is, yeah, we don't need to hit the panic button. We just need to make sure that everybody's where they're supposed to be, and then we just finish the plays.
Yeah, to me, the identity of this defense was not Micah. The identity of the defense was the crazy coverage schemes that Jeff Hafley cooks up. And I want to play you a sound from Kirk Cousins here because he's touched on it, and a lot of quarterbacks and coaches have touched on it, which is how defensive rotations have caused offenses to change.
Everything was, single high, split safety, pressure, quarters, off, bump, man zone, all these things. But what happened was defenses got so good at disguising it that I would be so stressed going into games going, the whole game plan is built on, is it single high or split safety? And I can't see if it's single high or split safety. Like, these defenses are just making it muddy until I'm 3 steps into my drop.
So to act as a quick translator here for Kirk, what he was talking about was how, if you're looking at a 2-high defense pre-snap that goes into a 1-high post-snap, or vice versa, a 1-high that goes into 2-high, that can slow down a quarterback's eyes. And if you're slowing down a quarterback's eyes and he doesn't know what he's looking at until he hits the top of his drop, that's going to help out the pass rush. And typically that's how I feel like Jeff Hafley has gotten pressure on the quarterback, is by slowing down the quarterback and keeping him from getting the ball out in 2.5 seconds, because he feels like he can scheme up pressure, but he can't scheme up pressure if the quarterback's getting the ball out instantly. So it's about slowing him down first and then figuring out how to get to him.
Yeah, he's a master at what I call passive pressure. I think where he's really excelled and what he worked on this offseason was essentially think of the defensive coverage like geometry. You're going to have boxes and you're going to have triangles. And he has been able to kind of realize where these different shapes are. And then I'm going to get to them in completely different ways. I mean, we've seen Xavier McKinney over and over again, basically bait throws into the seam, and he just picks them off because the quarterback doesn't think he's going to be there. And I think that's where it is. And that's where, like, he is not a match-heavy defensive guy, except for when he plays quarters. So that match doesn't mean, like, think of it as like a smart way of playing man or man with rules. He is getting into almost like these spot drops where we're playing a lot of vision. And that's a great complement to playing a lot of cover one. And then some of these match 3 that a lot of these teams are doing is like on later downs, I'm going to throw in a spot drop rotation. Everybody's got vision. And then here comes Xavier McKinney cutting underneath of the seam and getting the pick.
There was one, it literally just happened in the Bears game last week. If you guys have NFL Pro at home, by the way, go on NFL Pro. I'll give you the exact time code. Third quarter, 13:08, 2nd and 12. So 2nd and long here. Again, you guys can watch this at home on NFL Pro. They have all 22. Again, they start out in a 2-high look. They roll down into cover 3. And Xavier's playing the weak hook because they're motioning into, I guess you could call it 4 strong. Like, they're in pistol, but I'll just call it 4 strong because that's essentially what it is. He lets the vertical go, and he's kind of reading 3-2 and then comes back underneath it, like out of nowhere. I have no idea if he's even supposed to do this or if this was him just kind of getting into, like, channeling Troy Polamalu. But he came out of nowhere. Caleb did not see him at all. Could have picked it off. He dropped it.
McKinney has made so many guys pay over the last few years at safety. Caleb got away with one there.
This is the kind of stuff that Xavier McKinney does to people, and it's part of the reason why I think, again, you'd like to have Micah. I think they're going to be okay because they get their hands on the football by doing exactly this kind of rotation.
Yeah, and this one's a really good example of a safety essentially understanding his role within the defense. So that one of the reasons why you hear a lot of defensive coordinators talk about why everything is moving to a 2-high shell, not necessarily going to split field or even cover 2, but really running a 2-high shell, is that these safeties now have depth and can gain a lot of data as they're working towards the line of scrimmage. So we get play action, we get a motion into 3-by-1, which is what we saw here. His role in that defense as the weak hook is what's called a 3-up defender, meaning any 3 vertical that goes through the middle of the field, he's going to collect that and he's going to carry that. That really helps that post safety stay high. So in this defense, what they've really created is 3 layers, and McKinney actually goes back. It looks like it's almost like one of those Fangio rotations where they got cover 2 on one side and Course on the other. But then he realizes nobody's attacking me, so I'm just going to start working into the middle of the field. And he sees Caleb looking right at that dig route, and he undercuts it. We saw a similar play actually in the Panthers 49ers game, but from the corner spot where JC Horn essentially just cuts at a 45-degree angle. It's the same technique. It's the same concept, and it's how you build layers. And it just really shows you how well coached the secondary is. And then also just Xavier McKinney just knowing exactly where to get his eyes and know where to be on the field.
Well, we're going to see this matchup probably most likely again, because as of right now, it's looking increasingly likely that Green Bay is going back to Chicago in a couple weeks for the wild card round. And, if Chicago stays as the 2 seed, Seattle gets the 1 seed, and Green Bay likely gets a 7 seed. We're going to see Caleb and Ben versus Hafley again. So big picture here, I really don't think this team is dead. I think they have just as good of a shot of beating Chicago in round 3 as anybody does. And I think Packers fans are maybe panicking a little bit too early. Now, our next guest needs no introduction, but I'm going to do it anyway. Tom Grossi, you know him, you love him, everybody's favorite Packers fan. Unfortunately, Packers fans, long-suffering fan base, definitely nothing's gone right for them in the last 30 years. They've been through it this year.
I hate it. 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 I hate this all.
Tom's going to walk us through how he's feeling right now, because I'm assuming not that great.
Why are you so open?
Welcome to our humble abode, Tom. It's Christmas week, and I have a present for you.
And here's the kick. Pick that up. Pick that up. Pack. Oh my God, they're fighting for it. I hate 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 this all. I hate onside kicks. I hate onside kicks. Don't you do it. I think Savion Williams. Oh my God, the Bears recovered. Are you kidding me? Please, Packers. Please, 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 please. Takes the snap. Caleb, pressure in his face. Fires. Wide open touchdown. Why are you so open? Oh my God. Willis under center. He fumbles the ball. Oh my God, they fumbled the ball. It's a turnover on downs. They fumbled the ball. They fumbled the ball. They fumbled the ball. They fumbled the ball. They fumbled the freaking ball. And it's a turnover on downs. And Williams under center. Play action. Come on, get some pressure on him. He's going for it all. He's going deep, and it's going to be a touchdown. DJ Moore catches it. Packers lose. Hell of a throw and hell of a catch. What a disastrous end for the Packers, man.
Oh, buddy.
So this is what this show is, huh? This is it's like, hey, Tom, why don't you come on the show? We'd love to have you. Not even 10 seconds in. We got Timu 2015 NFC Championship game.
I was going to say, at what point did you realize you were just reliving your greatest trauma?
Yeah, as a former history teacher, we often say, right, like history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. But I feel like that was a repeat there. Just even the last throw at the end, right? I mean, it is a perfect throw in overtime. The only way it could have been even more identical was if the Bears got it first and that ended the game. But yeah, was so much fun to watch. That was horrible.
NFC Championship game versus just losing to the Bears that way in general. What is worse?
It's not worse because I think heading into that Seahawks game, the Packers were not favored to win that game, and they were dominating for the vast majority of it. Wilson was throwing interceptions, and that was and then we got that late interception. It was like, okay, this game is done. It was a little reminiscent actually of like what happened to the Rams on Thursday night. And then just to lose this way against the Bears makes it sting. Don't get me wrong, but at least I can hold out hope that okay, the Bears still have not beaten Jordan Love if he plays a full football game. So I'm still holding on to that because that's the only thing I have left. And I just hope we get a rematch in the wild card round.
Well, Toyotathon does run through the end of January. So
yes, it does.
You got a decent shot in part 3.
Yes, it does. That's right. Now, we're not talking about Honda holidays, nothing like that. It is Toyotathon only in this household. So you're celebrating Christmas. I'm celebrating Toyotathon.
Yeah, I'm not even there with my mind. I got to process kind of what happened, how that happened.
I want to see how you feel right now about this season and whether or not you judge this season as a success if they just make the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, so it's funny you say that because heading into the season before the Micah Parsons trade, right? It was kind of like, okay, let's see how they progress. Jeff Hafley transformed that defense into a really good unit last year. And I was like, all right, like maybe if we're able to have that complementary defense, if the offense is a little bit more consistent, we can get things going. The Josh Jacobs signing worked out really well. The Xavier McKinney signing went really well. The Packers didn't draft a corner until Micah Robinson in the 7th round. So that was a little bit like, okay, that's a little confusing because we did need help in the secondary, but they got Matthew Golden. I wasn't going to complain. And it just felt like this was okay, let's try and win the division. And from there, let's see what happens, right? But I think heading into this season, the thought was the Eagles are still going to be the dominant force in the NFC. But then the Micah Parsons trade happens, and I lost my mind. And the pass rush needed to get better. Like LVN, we really hadn't seen him play, whether it's been injury or he just hadn't been developed because he was a very raw talent coming out of school. And so immediately adding Micah Parsons did two things. One, it made our pass rush significantly better, which he did just on paper.
Goff is hit and sacked from the blind side. Micah Parsons.
And then two, as you well know, Brett, this reminds me of like the 49ers days when the Packers were constantly eliminated by them. If you're able to get pressure with just a 4-man front, it's going to make your secondary look so much better. So it was going to mask all those issues that we potentially would have had with our corners.
Steps up. He's hit and sacked. Micah Parsons again, this time right through the A-gap.
The first 2 games, you're 100% correct. We not only throttled the Commanders on a short week, but before that, we destroyed the Lions. Micah Parsons gets his first sack at Lambeau. They're going nuts, and it's like, we're going undefeated. Like, we are never going to lose a football game. And the Browns game, they were up late in that game, and then they just let that melt away of just a comedy of errors, and they wind up losing that game. And it's like, okay, maybe that was just the adjustment we needed. But then they go and they tie the Cowboys, and they barely tie the Cowboys because there was 1 second left on the clock. And then, as you said, Tucker Kraft goes down, who's a huge key to this offense, not only as a blocker, but also as a receiver. You mentioned Matthew Golden. I'm not super surprised about that. That's just because that's how the Packers usually treat their rookies. Evan Williams had a really good, rookie preseason camp, and then he barely played for the start of the season. So
rookies? What rookies? Says Matt LaFleur.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, these rookies do not exist. These are not the rookies you're looking for. And so that one I'm not too surprised, but it really is just this past week, man, because if you go to before the Denver game, I'm still feeling like this can still be a Super Bowl team. Sure, like there's that loss against the Panthers that's not great. The Eagles were really the only team that, in my opinion, like beat the Packers of like, oh, they were just a better team that night. It wasn't just an epic collapse. And they still only lost by 3. But then going into Denver, man, and you have Evan Williams going down, Christian Watson going down, Micah Parsons going down, Zach Tom going down, and you go from being up 2 scores to immediately now playing defensively, and they just can't get pressure anymore. The defensive front from the Broncos start getting after Jordan Love, and it's just a disaster. And so at that point, when Parsons is out for the season, it's like, okay, that's a bit of a gut punch, and I think that's going to reduce the ceiling of where the Packers can go. I don't think they're really a Super Bowl team. You never know. And then this past Saturday, losing to the Bears in that fashion, but then losing Jordan Love, who he's now in concussion protocol. They had no Zach Tom. They had no Evan Williams, but they ran the ball really well with Malik Willis. And this is something that Packers fans are always confused about because they're like, why does Malik Willis look so good? And why does LaFleur get really damn good at play calling when he's in? It really just opens up the ground game because Malik Willis, of course, is a mobile QB. And because of that, with him, Emmanuel Wilson, I know Jacobs didn't play a ton except for that fumble. They got 192 rushing yards against the Bears on Saturday. And so it's not the fact that we lost. It's the fact that we lost in that fashion against the Bears. And now we have an injury to our starting quarterback that makes me go, okay, yeah, it's a success if we make the playoffs. And honestly, depending on how the season has already looked, who the heck knows?
Well, I will say, if they get round 3 against the Bears, which again looks more likely than any other matchup,
sure,
I still probably would favor the Packers. Because again, it took like multiple acts of God for Chicago to win that game. It was 99.5% in favor of the Packers. Yeah. Even with Malik Willis in the game and dealing with all the injuries like that, that's still a really, really good football team. If I'm a Bears fan, I want the Packers to be anything but the 7th seed. Like, I'd rather be a 3rd seed as the Bears to avoid the Packers, because I'd rather deal with basically any other matchup. So if I'm a Packers fan, I still think like division round is on the table. And once you get to the division round, there's 4 teams left, right? Like, you just need Xavier McKinney to have like the game of all games, get me a couple picks, Jordan Love go on that Toyota-thon heater. You're in the NFC Championship game. And then the season's kind of a success. So they're a game away from being a game away, which is why if I'm a Packers fan, I'm not actually that distraught, even though, the Bears kind of took it.
Yeah, it's not full blown. It's exactly how you phrased it before. It's just the what if, right? Like, because this team, I think on paper, is a Super Bowl team. And like, it does give me a lot of excitement for next year, but it's exactly what you said. And you look at the NFC and you look at the entire NFL, there is not one powerhouse team this year that you go, oh man, they are far and above better than every other squad out there. Look at the Rams. They have an epic collapse on Thursday night before the Packers' epic collapse on Saturday night. The Seahawks, we've seen. The Colts didn't allow them to score a single touchdown, and then the 49ers just put 48 points on them, on Monday night. So there is not a single team that's like, oh man, they are they are going to go to the Super Bowl. So I agree with you. I mean, heck, if the 49ers wind up winning out, they're the number 1 seed. So if I'm just opening my history book here, if we have a chance to go at Chicago and win there, then we get an opportunity to get some revenge against the 49ers. I don't hate it. And I do think it is possible, because I think these playoffs are going to be so chaotic, because that's what this season has been.
Before I get out of here, I want to say you've done great work. $181,000 in your December charity stream. You're up to 2-point-something million since the start of 2021, right?
Yeah, we started raising money for charity in 2021. So since 2021, we raised $2.4 million for charity. And this year alone, because we had the Millie stream back in February, we raised $1.3 million this year, which is pretty insane, man. Just the way that this has snowballed, the way I run my channel of like not showing sponsors and nothing like that. Really, the only time I ever ask folks for money is during those charity fundraisers, and people just keep on showing out, and it just keeps on getting larger and larger every single year. So, if I get to have a job, I'll be in my 11th year. It'll be 11 years, January 19th of me doing this. If I get to have a job where, I get to sit in pajama pants and talk about a game that I love and a team that I love, I want to be sure to give back. And I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to do that and have such an awesome community that constantly pays it forward.
I'm just surprised you wear pants. Like, again, this camera cuts off at the chest for a reason, but.
Oh no, they're pajama pants. I mean, listen, that's the one thing I told myself. I'll work 100 hours a week doing this gig, but I'm wearing comfy pants. And that's the one thing I'm going to give myself.
We've spent a lot of time talking about Bears Packers on this show, and we got a little bit more for you, because it's time to talk about the Bears and their evolution as a run game and as an offense overall.
Let's go! No! No! No!
To help walk us through that, we have author, analyst, all-around good guy, Coach Dan Casey in the house.
Thanks for having me, man. This is awesome. Anytime I get to talk ball with Brett Coleman, it's a good day.
We will get into the Bears shortly, because obviously that's one of the hot topics around the entire NFL this year is Ben Johnson turning this offense from, let's say, struggling into kind of a juggernaut here. But I first wanted to ask you about some of the trends that we've seen around the league that I think are reflected in this Bears offense, which is a lot of condensed formations, running between the tackles, and also kind of punishing penetration, right? Like we've seen this era of outside zone, kind of proliferate around the NFL for a long time. And then you saw defenses react to that with odd fronts, tilt fronts, everybody in a gap, get upfield, force an early cutback, get TFLs. And so now you're starting to see offenses, and especially offenses that are outside zone heavy, like Chicago, really lean into trap, wham, and just kind of punishing, especially defensive tackles getting up the field. When's the last time you recall this many inside runs and this many traps and whams being run around the league?
Man, it feels like it's been a long time. I mean, when McVay really took the league by storm with all the wide zone stuff in 2017, I guess it was 2017, 18, and 19. And, that became kind of the predominant theme. But I think, like you said, it's always a game of cat and mouse, where defenses wanted to be more aggressive and really hunting those TFLs to try and get offenses behind the sticks. Jim Schwartz has been doing it for years, just getting up the field, penetrating, playing man coverage behind it, and getting a lot of TFLs so you can get into your third down packages. And so offenses have had to respond with more creative run schemes. And it's been cool to see. I think obviously with what Ben Johnson's done, he's done an excellent job punishing those penetrators. I think Todd Monken has done a good job over the years in Baltimore. And Shanahan, I think, is at the forefront this year again with what he's doing with Kittle and Juszczyk and just the ways that they're creating extra gaps inside.
McCaffrey, another big run to Falcon territory, the 49-yard line.
Yeah, they still want to hit the edge occasionally, but you have to be able to cut through the middle of the defense if you're going to have success in modern NFL with the way people are setting edges these days. And so, yeah, the space is ironically inside now, which is not what you'd expect to hear or see.
There is a particular play I want to start with, and you sent me this one. Hell of a trap against the Browns. And this, I think, is like the key example of how this kind of run scheme works. Can you walk me through it?
So on this play in particular, Mason Graham at the 3 technique, he's a penetrator. Jim Schwartz loves to get guys up the field. And so this is just a great example of taking advantage of that when you're able to cover down on the backers and pull Jonah Jackson at the guard to get an unbelievable kick out block here on Mason Graham as he's getting up the field. And what I love from Chicago, and we'll see it more when we get into some of the DeAndre Swift clips and even some more Monangai clips, is just the velocity with which they hit the line of scrimmage. These backs are really trusting the concept and hitting it downhill, and nobody wants to mess with Myles Garrett on the edge. So if you can hit something inside of him, you take that opportunity every chance you get.
You mentioned the pace of the run, and that's really something I don't think anybody ever talks about, which is the difference in the pace of a college run versus like a successful NFL run, because there is so much more under center used in the NFL versus college. Last time I checked, average under center in college is about 5%. It's around 30% in the NFL. And the runs from under center hit a lot quicker. You don't have time in the NFL. Like, you got to just go and trust your guys. And it's really more of a bend than a cut at the NFL level. And to your point, that's something that we've seen even DeAndre Swift get better at this year, which is just trusting it and going, which for the first few years of his career, I felt like he was almost trying to like cosplay Le'Veon Bell, where he's like waiting. It's like, buddy, you got to go.
Can't do that.
And he's going.
And I think, to your point, the style of offense has completely shifted, and we praise Le'Veon Bell for his patience and his vision for so long. But now that you get these wide edge-setting defenses and penetrating fronts, you have to trust the scheme and you have to hit it downhill as fast as humanly possible. And one of the things I actually look for quite a bit when I'm studying NFL offenses now is that time to the line of scrimmage for the running backs. And you saw it in Detroit with Ben Johnson when he was back there. Both David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs hit the line of scrimmage really quickly because they trusted the scheme and the timing of everything worked out. If you are trying to bounce a lot of stuff nowadays, even on duo bouncing, like, you better have a wrapper or someone out to handle that extra defender, because guys are just too fast in closing that horizontal space. And so, I think there was a time when the middle would get plugged up, or like you'd run inside zone or split zone and be able to kind of be patient and bounce the ball outside. But it's not that those days are over, but it's really, really difficult to create a consistent run game and not take a lot of negatives when you run with that style. And I think the difference between before the bye week with the Bears and after the bye week is the velocity to the line of scrimmage for both the backs. You can just tell there's a sense of urgency and a deliberateness with everything they're doing that wasn't present before the bye week.
It's backed up by numbers too. If you're looking at their EPA per play, as far as a run game in weeks 1 through 4, they were 28th. Since the bye week, starting in week 6, they're first.
I don't think it's magic in terms of the bye week being some sort of catalyst that makes everything fit together. But the reality is, when you're putting together a core of an interior offensive line, everybody talks about the tackles so much, but in the modern run game right now, the guards and the centers are really driving so much of it. And so if you go back and watch those first 4 weeks of film, the backs just did not trust it in the way that they're trusting it now. There's no hesitation with the backs now. And that's made the biggest difference, I think.
So having an interior trio that can, kind of gel on how to handle not just certain fronts, but certain techniques of defensive linemen within those fronts, that's everything. And it
Oh, yeah.
sounds like minutia. It sounds subtle, but like that's the difference between 6 yards and 12.
It really is. It really is. And so again, I don't think it's a magic bullet. It's not like some brand new play that they're calling that they haven't called all year. I think it's getting those interior three on the same page. And then really so much of the eye candy is receivers inserting into the run scheme, the tight ends getting the timing right, the way that they're hitting motions on the run on outside zone and creating additional gaps. And again, the running backs trusting it. In Ben Johnson's offense, it's not like the offensive line handles the run game and the receivers handle the pass game. Everything is tied together. And, the more you look at offenses now, it's like the best player is going to be moved all around the field from that receiver group. You're not going to have an X that's just stuck on the line of scrimmage like the old days. You have to move your best players around, and they're going to have to be integral in the run game as well. And that's part of the reason they get open in the pass game is because they block. You look at Amon-Ra St. Brown, Puka Nacua, all these guys that are leading the league in receiving are typically talented blockers and important pieces in the run game as well. And it has to all fit together for you to be successful on offense.
I know you're familiar with that game-winning play that Puka made in the Rams game against the Texans week 1, where it was insert over and over again. Defender steps up because they're going to take on Puka in the hole, and then he just slips outside, gets the first down, game over, right? So it's all about having everything look the same but executed differently, and there's so much nuance to it. Something I do want to ask you is, as we've seen this run game develop and get increasingly better throughout the season, which, by the way, doesn't always happen. A lot of teams start running the ball well and then stall out. This team's the opposite. How far can this Bears team go riding this run game? Because to me, if you get into winter months, especially if you're playing outside, if they're hosting playoff games, if you can reliably put up a $150 to 200 on the ground, even if you're just adequate on defense, you could do like real damage here.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, and the reality is it's not just the run game, it's what the run game does for Caleb and all the boots and the keepers on the back side of it. And he's so dynamic that he's also aiding the run game. Everybody thinks that in order for the quarterback to be involved in the run game, it has to be from the shotgun and you're running zone read. That's not true at all. The reality is if your quarterback is a really good boot quarterback or keeper quarterback that can run play action and get out on the edge and create opportunities, that is going to slow down that backside pursuit so much, and it's going to create creases. And so Caleb's dynamic playmaking ability is also creating opportunities in the run game and vice versa, right? The run game obviously opens up the pass as well. You're able to max protect, take shots down the field, all these different things. And so having a lot of solutions in the run game, as a guy like Ben Johnson does with the interior traps and whams and all of those different things, it really does. It just keeps you on schedule. And so that the pass game can all take care of itself instead of sitting in third and longs. If you sit in third and long, I don't care if you're Tom Brady or Peyton Manning, it's going to be a long day. It just is with the modern defenses.
Yeah, the average conversion rate drops off a cliff. Once you get to 6+, it's
really
crazy. Like that's why second down arguably is just as, if not more important than third down, because if you can keep yourself out of third down at all, you're going to be a much better offense. That's why third down has its own, call sheet for both offense and defense, because that's its own situation.
Here is Monongai. Up the middle and a first down into Packers territory.
Again, a third down run. Not surprised Ben Johnson calls that. He does that more than any offensive coordinator.
The next team I want to bring up, obviously, my Houston Texans. You live in Houston. They lead the league in using 6 offensive linemen, and to me, that is their substitute for 12 and 13 personnel, because they're basically treating it the same way that the Rams do when they bring out all these tight ends, which is like, yeah, they're going to try to run the ball out of it. Still not very good at it. But more importantly, they're going to throw when there's 6 offensive linemen on the field, and they're really good at that.
Well, 100%. I think, again, it's knowing your personnel and knowing who you have. And when you go back and watch a lot of CJ Stroud's film, it's interesting. I know you can't necessarily compare them as athletes and players per se, but like I think a lot about Josh Allen when I think about CJ Stroud, in the sense that you want to create almost like a pitcher's mound for him to really throw off. He's such a talented thrower. that you want to create space. And I know that the Bills talk a lot about, creating the depth of the pocket and really firming up the interior of the pocket so Josh has room to really showcase that arm strength and that ability and his full stroke. Obviously, all these quarterbacks have the ability to do the sidearm and off platform stuff, but I think CJ's at his best when he's, thrown off the mound, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that 6 offensive lineman stuff has been really good for the Texans because they do firm up the pocket. And a lot of times it's on some sort of boot action where they're relocating the launch point. And you're doing it not behind a tight end, but behind a true offensive lineman. And he can really step into these throws. And that's where his A+ throws come, is when he's, got that clean pocket and can really let things rip. And also, when you bring in 6 offensive linemen and you have bigger personnel groupings and you're getting the defense in base coverage, you're creating more isolation opportunities for guys like Nico Collins and Christian Kirk and some of these receivers that can make some plays, and even the young guys, the rookies, Higgins and Noel. And I think that's another opportunity where, you may not run the ball great, but defenses, by virtue of the personnel grouping, kind of have to respond in a way that they're not going to be too light against a 6 offensive line look. And so it limits what they can do from a coverage perspective for sure.
There was a particular play you sent to me, and it was a bomb down the field against the 49ers. And the thing that stuck out to me is one of the ultimate truisms in offensive football, which is everything becomes a one-on-one when it's 40 yards down the field, right?
That's the truth.
Hard play action fake, 6 offensive linemen on the field. You only got 2 receivers against 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 defenders. But again, when the ball's going deep down the field and you don't have post help and you're throwing to grass, it almost doesn't matter how many receivers versus defenders you have, because you're just trying to isolate one patch of grass deep down the field. And again, with 6 offensive linemen, you're ideally going to be protected long enough to hit it.
Yeah, that's the idea, right? And this play in particular, it's an old play that Gary Kubiak used to run a ton when he was with the Texans. So I'm sure for Texans fan, there's got to be some nostalgia there. You're used to big Andre Johnson on the post, and Kevin Walter. You had mentioned Kevin Walter before we jumped on, but him sitting in that, running that heat route and kind of sitting it down and running it out. And you work high to low as a quarterback, all the way from the top down. And so the six offensive linemen, the full slide protection, bringing the tight end and kind of inserting into that C gap for protection as well. It's a 3-man route. It's football 101. But it's just a great job setting it up, protecting it, and then you give your star quarterback a chance to make a great throw. And you give a receiver enough time to really create some separation. So I think it's just becoming an identity piece for the Texans of, hey, we're going to load up in protection, and also the running backs are protecting very well this year, which is it's got to be a welcome sight for Texans fans as well. If you can protect CJ Stroud, special things can happen. And when you're not getting in those 3rd and longs, he's got to be feeling much better about his life.
You mentioned protection, and that's also something I really want to focus on here, which is these running backs doing their part in keeping Stroud clean. Per Next Gen Stats, Dario Ogunbowale, he has 34 pass blocks, 0 pressures allowed. Woody Marks repeatedly throughout the year has gone up in terms of his share of protection duties, and there's clips every single week of him just putting his face into a lawnmower and eating it for the cause. And he's been excellent in pass pro, especially for a rookie.
Amazing. It's amazing.
He really is. He's kind of been like an unsung hero here. And one of the oldest sayings, again, in offensive football, is you're only as good as your worst offensive lineman. I think you're only as good as your worst blocker, period. And with how many teams, they don't rely on 5-man protections. They rely on 6 and 7-man protections. So even if you have 5 great offensive linemen, if your back can't protect, if your tight end can't protect, somebody's getting through. And it only takes one to disrupt the quarterback. So the Texans kind of shoring that up to me. Again, are they the most dominant offense in the league? No, but it was looking pretty rough in the first month here. And one of the reasons why they've been able to win so many games is they could protect now.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that maybe fans don't initially understand is that The way I think of pass protection is actually similar to how in basketball, particularly the NBA, but also like higher level college basketball, the way they defend the pick and roll. There's a lot of different ways you can defend the pick and roll. And sometimes the key is just throwing a lot of different looks at a really good pick and roll duo. And so when you have some of these exotic pressure teams, I mean, you have Valu Anarumo, you have Brian Flores, you have all these guys, Steve Spagnuolo, that they do such a good job bringing heat. And don't even get me started about Todd Bowles. He'll draw stuff up you've never seen before. It's really tricky. Yeah, you may have the perfect rules. You may have everything schemed out on paper, and yeah, you can account for everything. But eventually, they're, like you said, they're going to be able to understand your protection rules and then isolate their best guy on your worst guy. And it's a bad day when that happens. And so I think what the Texans have done a much better job of this season, as the season has progressed, is having multiple options in protection and being able to present different slides and different variations of how they fit up protection. And particularly when they're getting those mug looks, those can be really tricky. And can force your hand on your protection rules. And so I love particularly the clip when Woody Marks has stepped up in that front side A gap, and he actually works to the backside A gap to pick up in pass protection and gets isolated on a linebacker and does a great job, just stones him. But I think a lot of times when a back is stepped up in that A gap, your assumption is he's just going to step straight forward and block the guy in front of him. And that's an option. But then also having him relocate to the opposite A gap as well is another way you can handle it. And so I just think that Frank Reich used to talk about it. The difference between college and pro often was just the amount of options you have in pass protection, or the volume you carry in pass protection. And I think that that's certainly the case. And when you have quarterbacks that come out of college, a lot of times you try to simplify your pass protection just so they're not drinking through a fire hose. But I think now as CJ's progressing, just having more options in pass protection and probably giving him a little bit more control at the line of scrimmage is a key. And then when you have a back that can really step up and handle someone, and you trust him to handle someone, you can step up in the pocket and let it rip. And we talked about the Bears and running backs trusting the scheme. I think for CJ, it's trusting the protection and, just truly looking at your hot and trusting that everything else is going to be in place. It's not perfect. But trust is such a key when the game is moving as fast as it is.
That touchdown against the Chiefs, where he hit Woody as the hot, that to me was like the ultimate kind of counterpunch of,
yes,
okay, now we can punish you by acting like we're going to have Woody again put his face into a lawnmower protection and just have him slip it, and there's nobody there. That to me is like the ultimate counter to a man pressure of, not only are we going to, try to make a linebacker hesitate by thinking he has to make a move, he's not just running, straight at me, but if we can slip it and there's nobody on the back end because they think that he's in pass pro, so they're not allocating anybody. That to me was one of like the signature, like, oh, they've got it. They figured it out. Because not only can they use him to protect, they can also use him to punish pressures.
Touchdown, Houston. Pressure came. Nobody went with Woody Marks. Third touchdown catch of the year.
It's such a great example of, we talked about the defense knowing the offense's rules and taking advantage of it. A lot of times when the offense, they may have what they call like a check burst or a check swing for the running back, where he's checking. If anybody comes, he has to stay in and block. If nobody comes, he can release into his route. And so what defenses will do, is Spags particularly will say, all right, if your rule is check release, then I'm just bringing the backer. And you're going to always have to stay in, and I'm always going to be +1 in bringing an extra guy. And so basically what the Texans said is, okay, sounds good. We're just going to slip it. So now that you have a rule of adding to the pressure with your backer, we're going to just slip out into, basically fake block and then slip out into the flat or into the kind of that burst area. And I think it's just a great example of like that cat and mouse game in pass protection, where you have to have rules because rules give clarity in chaotic situations, but you also have to be able to break your own rules occasionally. And that's where you see some of these explosive plays happen. And I just think I love seeing some of the creativity in pass protection. And I think that's where you're seeing them take the next step as an offense. It's not just, can we protect? It's all right, now we're playing games with protection. And that's where it gets fun, I think, as a coaching staff.
Big picture right now, the most likely matchups, assuming the Texans make it, which they're winning in. If the Texans make it, their most likely playoff matchups in the wild card are coming right back to LA 2 weeks later or potentially going on the road to Jacksonville. From a offense versus defense matchup, do you feel like these are winnable for the Texans considering how they're currently constructed? Or if not, what's going to be their Achilles heel here?
Yeah, I know we're talking about offense, but I think when you have that defense, it feels like any game is winnable. I think the real question is, can you find enough of a run game where you're not necessarily asking Nico Collins to win a bunch of one-on-ones to win a game? Obviously, he can do it, right? He can be that winner for you, but I think it was Ben Johnson that said, "I don't really like scheming up 50-50 balls. Like I'd rather scheme you open." And so I think the similar thing holds true for the Texans right now. Just, how do we get enough of a run game going, be able to control the line of scrimmage enough that we can really put it in the hands of our defense? And so I think, it's such a luxury to have one of the best defenses in the league heading into the playoffs like this. And I think if they can be efficient on offense and continue with that identity of 6 offensive linemen and stretching the field vertically in the pass game a little bit with the one-on-ones they're able to create, I think they always got a shot. But those are 2 tough matchups for sure. It's never easy to go on the road in the playoffs. But I think you'd rather go to LA. Probably it's more of a home game.
Well, I don't know. There are a lot of Texans fans in LA. I've been to Texans games.
Well, no, that's what I'm
before,
saying. Is can't you? Would it be in Houston or in LA?
It would. I believe right now it's if it breaks that way, Texans would be the 7 seed. Chargers potentially are alive for the 2 seed. Or if the Texans get the 6 seed, they might be going to Jacksonville. Which the way that Trevor's playing right now, I don't know if I want to deal with that. So I would prefer going to LA. But again, that's what makes this weekend's matchup so huge. Is like all of the seeding and playoff matchups are determined by this game this week.
100%.
I'm excited for it. I want to thank you for joining and sharing your knowledge with us. I know that time is hard to come by this time of year, but I do appreciate you giving it to us.
Anything for you, Brett. Appreciate you, man.
I want to do a little quick whip around here around some other key games happening this weekend because we don't want to leave any fan bases out here. Starting with Seattle at Carolina, the ultimate chaos game. And hell, the Panthers are kind of the ultimate chaos franchise this season, not just because they win one and lose one and win one and lose one and win one and lose one. It's how they win and lose, right? This is a team whose turnover margin per game is 0.0. They are dead even in turnover margin. And if you're looking at in games where they win the turnover battle versus games where they lose the turnover battle, that is essentially their win and loss record right there. It's actually kind of startling how much their ability to win games is because of them generating turnovers and kind of giving their offense an extra crack at things. This is a very run-heavy team. They've been a very efficient running team, not explosive, but efficient. They like to chew clock. They like to win in high-leverage situations on 3rd down and in the red zone. And if they can give themselves just 1 extra possession per game, which typically they like to hold, both sides down to 10 or fewer possessions if they have their say, 9 possessions is ideal for them. That turns every single possession into an even higher leverage situation. So if they can take one away and add 1 for them, typically they're going to win those kind of games. So that's how they win, against the Packers. That's how they win against the Rams, is these teams try to get down in the mud with the Panthers and wrestle with them, and they're comfortable in that territory. You don't want to wrestle against the Panthers. You just kind of want to attack them immediately and get them into a trailing position. So if Carolina, wins the turnover battle here, they're a live dog. I wouldn't be surprised if they actually beat Seattle. But if Seattle jumps on them early, I don't know if Carolina quite has the firepower to come back. So keep an eye on that one. Massive implications for NFC seeding. Houston at the Chargers, another huge game for AFC seeding. Chargers have clinched because the Colts lost on Monday. The Texans are win and in. And this game determines a lot for first round playoff matchups, right? So if the Texans are the 7 seed, they might actually be right back in LA in 2 weeks facing the Chargers because the Chargers are still alive for the 1 seed. I don't want to say more likely than not, but the most likely place they land is at the 2 seed. So we could see this matchup again in 2 weeks. But if the Texans win, all of a sudden they're alive for the 6 seed, and they might be going on the road in the wildcard round to Jacksonville for another part 3 with a very, very hot Jags team. So there's a lot of implications for this game, not just for who's making the playoffs, but where they're going to be playing in the playoffs. Again, Chargers really want to win this one because they don't want to have to go on the road to Denver in January. That's just miserable. The air is thin, it's dry, it's windy, it's loud. You don't want to deal with that. You'd rather them come to you. So Chargers need this win. Texans probably would not like to come back and face Jesse Minter twice in 2 weeks. That's not a recipe for success either. If anything, they'd probably rather go on the road to Jacksonville. Well, I don't know. That offense is pretty dope. Maybe there's not like a real win scenario here for the Texans, but either way, they're winning in. So that's first priority, win and clinch the playoffs. Huge game. Pittsburgh at Cleveland. This doesn't really have major playoff implications. More likely than not, the Steelers are going to end up winning the AFC North. It's not official yet, but it's basically official. But the real reason for me to watch this game is Myles Garrett sack watch. He could potentially set a record here. I'm not sure it's going to get broken. I really don't think it will, because he's got 2 games to go. He could potentially not just break the sack record this week, but stack enough sacks on it by the end of the season that nobody's going to get close to this thing unless they're really expanding the regular season out to 18 games. And even then, that's a tall order. If you're looking at pass rush win rate, which is a stat that I love getting from PFF, and especially on true dropbacks, so non-screen, non-play action, non-RPO, like it's a true drop back pass situation. Ball's not coming out super quick. His pass rush win rate is about 35%, which is absurd. For context, Aiden Hutchinson has a really, really good pass rush win rate on true dropbacks. He's at 20%. So he is, 15% higher than Aiden Hutchinson, of all people. Like, that is how dominant Myles Garrett has been this year. He really is having a season for the ages. He is a player for the ages. And quite frankly, I think it's going to be a long time before I see something else like Myles Garrett. He's in that prime Aaron Donald tier, that prime JJ Watt tier, shortlist for the greatest defensive player I have ever seen. So watch this game just for that alone. You might see history made here, and history that's going to hold up for a long, long time. And then final game in the whip round, Rams at Atlanta. This one sounds weird to cover for a lot of people because they're like, it doesn't really have huge playoff implications here, but it does have massive draft implications. Because this is one of the rare scenarios where the Rams, if they win this game, make their pick better. Right now, the Falcons, who traded away their first-round pick to the Rams to go up and get James Pierce, they're sitting at 11 in the draft order. If they lose, they're going to go into the top 10, which means the Rams are incentivized to win this game to get a top 10 draft pick. I don't know if that's ever happened before this late in the season. So again, huge game, because the Rams, again, are trying to plan for the post-Matthew Stafford era. He's still playing MVP level football, but never know how long he's going to be playing. So they're going to have 2 first-round picks, and if one of them is in the top 10, all of a sudden you're looking at them as a contender to go up and get, say, Dante Moore or insert young quarterback that they want to sit on the bench and develop here. It's a really, really sneaky, important game, more for 2027 and 2028 than 2025 and 2026, but you should be watching this one because the draft order is going to be determined by this game. Little segment to close the show we like to call 3 and Out. I have 3 thoughts that I absolutely could not get out of this show without getting off my chest. First of which is about the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jaguars fans, by the way, not huge fans of mine because of my criticism of them in the first half of the season, but I am a firm believer that criticism has no weight if there is no praise to go along with it. And the volume of that criticism should be equaled by the volume of the praise when necessary. And so I was very, very vocal about my criticism of the Jags early on this season. They did have actual fatal flaws that needed to be fixed. And seemingly, since acquiring Jacoby Myers, those flaws have been fixed. So again, I want to make the praise as loud as the disrespect, as Jags fans put it. And I want to heap some praise on the Jacksonville Jaguars in the second half of the season. Since week 11, which was the week after they acquired Jacoby Myers, they are 11th in EPA per play on offense. They are 11th in success rate. But if you're looking at actual points scored and drive efficiency, I mean, they are way up there with the best offenses in the NFL. And a big reason for that is they fixed a lot of the flaws that I hammered them for in the first 8 weeks of the season, especially coming off a streak where they lost 3 out of 4 games. And, a few of the things that I really hammered them for was they were very, very screen reliant. If you're looking at early on in the season, weeks 1 through 9, their screen rate dropped from 17%, which is really, really high, all the way down to, again, since week 11 till now, 9%. So that's 22nd. They went from 4th in terms of using screen passes to 22nd. They realized they weren't very good at it. And believe me, they were awful at screens. And they took those screens and basically put them back into the run game. That was another thing I criticized them heavily for. I wanted them to be a more run-centric team. This team is now the 6th highest run rate in the NFL since week 11. Again, week 2 of the Jacoby Myers era over there. Their efficiency per run has gone downhill, but it's really more about the commitment to running than their effectiveness as a running team. Their under center rate has gone up to being the 7th highest in the NFL. Their under center run rate is up to 75% from being in the mid 60s early on in the season. And their passer rating on under center play action is 110. That's the 9th best in the entire NFL on the 11th most attempts since week 11. So they've really transitioned from being, I don't want to say like a gimmicky type of offense that was really screen heavy, but they're kind of getting back to basics, which is lining up under center, taking shots down the field off play action. Trevor's average depth of target has gone up from 8.7 to 10.6. So that's a huge, huge difference. Like they're actually attacking down the field. And of course, Jacoby Myers himself has been a difference maker. And I don't want to say he's revived Trevor, but he certainly made Trevor's life easier, especially if you're looking at contested catch situations. He's caught 6 of 7 contested targets since getting to the Jaguars. That's an 85% contested catch rate. By the way, a good contested catch rate is 50-50. An elite contested catch rate is 60%, which is what Jacoby's been since the start of last season. To go 85%, I mean, he has the same number of contested catches since week 11 as George Pickens on half as many contested targets. Like, he is incredible at winning the ball in the air. And that's been a boon for Trevor, obviously, who's needed a guy like that. Keep in mind, the Jags overall since week 11 still have the 3rd highest drop rate overall in the league. Like, the drops are still there, but at least he now has somebody he can rely on in Jacoby Myers. Parker Washington's also emerged over the last couple of weeks. He put the entire Denver defense in a blender last week. So that's been a really big help for Trevor. But honestly, most important of all, Trevor's been playing better. If you're looking at off-target incompletions, which again is something I hammered him for in the first half of the season, he's only got 14 in the last 6 games. That's 7th fewest in the entire NFL out of starting quarterbacks. If you're looking at weeks 1 through 9, he had the 6th most. So Trevor's been more accurate. His receivers, particularly Jacoby Myers and Parker Washington, have actually caught the ball better. The run game has been more, let's just say, given more attention, even if it hasn't been the most effective. They're at least trying to run the ball. And they cut out a screen game that just wasn't that good. Like, they're operating as an actual offense now. And so quarterbacks playing better, receivers are playing better, Liam's calling better games. Everything is better. So, was I wrong about the Jaguars? In the long term, yeah, like, they have really established themselves as one of the best teams in the AFC. But I also, I want to be clear about this. This is not the same team as they were in the first half of the season. In fact, they're the polar opposite team that they were in the first half of the season in terms of, they were on the verge of setting a franchise record as far as their pace of turnovers generated in the first part of the season. And they were kind of living off that and giving themselves all these extra possessions. Now they've become a more efficient offense that doesn't have to rely on turnovers to give them better field position and to give them more swings at the plate. They can just score on their own. So yes, I was wrong about the Jaguars, but also the Jaguars got better. I think 2 things can be true, but I want the praise to be as loud as the disrespect. I think Jags fans have earned that from me. Next up on 3 and Out, we have actually a question from you, the fans. Unfortunately, a Lions fan that I think is going through it as well this year. I think the Lions have like a 6% chance of making the playoffs this year after, being one of the best teams in the NFL last year. This comes from Bueno Bars Are Good. He asked, why do you think teams like Detroit haven't been great this year despite a better roster? Or what else do you think? So for me, looking at Detroit, it's just about lack of efficiency in high leverage situations. This is a team that last year they had the 4th most plays ran on 4th down. This year it's the 5th most plays ran on 4th down, but their efficiency has dropped from 7th best to 19th. And those are high leverage plays, right? Like these are typically going to be plays that are already in the red zone or at least in field goal range. They're trying to turn an opportunity to get 3 into an opportunity to get 7. And if your efficiency drops by that much, and you're turning drives that last year they were turning 3s into 7s, this year they're turning 3s into 0s, in a sport where most games are going to be won and lost by 3 points or 3.5 points, I think is the actual average. That matters, right? Like we saw that happen in the Steelers game. They had 2 4th down opportunities. They went for both of them, only got 1. They got 7 points out of it. But, if they even just picked up that 4th down and got 3 out of it, they could have turned 7 into 10 and have a totally different ball game. So it's just 4th down efficiency. Obviously, they're still banged up. I think if they come back next year, they're healthier, and they just kind of get back up to a 60% conversion rate on 4th down, because we know they're still going to run a lot of 4th down plays, they'll be fine. 3rd down now here for 3 and out. Massive game this weekend. One of the most important games of the entire season, honestly. Giants at Raiders in Vegas. Winner of this game is still probably going to be picking in the top 5. Loser of this game, more than likely, is going to be the first overall pick. And depending on which team gets the first overall pick, that's going to have massive ramifications for the draft order, for how the draft plays out for this year, but also for the fates of several different franchises in 2026 and 2027. Because if the Giants get the first overall pick, they already have a quarterback. They like Jackson Dart a lot. More than likely, they're probably going to trade out of that first overall pick because somebody's going to want to come up for, in all likelihood, Fernando Mendoza, in my opinion, going to be the first quarterback selected. But if the Raiders get the first overall pick, they're probably just going to take Fernando Mendoza, in my opinion. And there's not a whole lot of quarterbacks available in this class that we think can probably play early. So again, huge ramifications on this game. And more importantly, on the free agent and trade market for quarterbacks in March, because if this quarterback class, like let's just say Dante goes back to school, because he might, it's not like college quarterbacks aren't getting paid these days. He can make similar money to what a rookie quarterback's getting paid in year 1. He can make similar money in college at this point. So if he goes back and it's kind of a 1-horse race here, you're going to see a lot of quarterback needy teams scrambling to get one for 2026. I look at Kyler Murray. I look at Mac Jones. I look at Malik Willis, Tua, Marcus Mariota, maybe Kirk Cousins. The method of acquiring all these guys is going to be different, right? Malik Willis is going to be a free agent. Marcus Mariota is going to be a free agent. Kyler Murray, you're going to have to trade for. Tua, because of the financials on his deal, Miami's probably going to send a pick with Tua and do like a Brock Osweiler type trade just to get him off the books. And then Mac Jones, you're going to have to trade for as well. But again, good luck getting Kyle Shanahan to give up Mac Jones. There's a lot of different methods to get a veteran quarterback, but I really do think we're going to see a ton of movement in that market in March and maybe even into April. So again, keep an eye on who is declaring for this quarterback class, because Dante Moore coming out or not coming out is going to have huge ramifications for Kyler, Tua, Mac, etc. And if he goes back to school, I'd say Ian and Tom are going to be very, very busy during Combine Week. Wrapping it up here for the day. Again, I really do appreciate you guys for watching and listening, wherever you happen to be watching and listening. I know it's not just a national sport, it's a global sport, especially here on YouTube. So wherever you happen to be consuming this, I do appreciate it, especially if you stayed this long and kind of feed the algorithm gods. Before I get out of here, I do want to get your feedback, by the way, because this is a brand new show we're kind of doing here for a few weeks to get you ready for and through the playoffs. What did you like about it? What did you not like about it? Was it a little bit too dense? Was it not dense enough? We want the community to help build this show with us. We're really trying to make something that football fans want to watch every single week. So sound off in the comments below. Tell us what you like, what you didn't like. Tell us what you want us to talk about next week, and we'll make that happen for you. Again, appreciate you guys all for watching and listening, and we'll see you next week.